I saw
Go
your
ahead.
video about the Brad Underwood haters, and I loved it because they've wanted him fired for a very long time.
Oh my God.
And
I don't understand the Brad Underwood haters, man. I really don't.
well, because Illinois, me and my friends said this, it's like we finally become relevant again. Now we
Hmm.
think we're too good, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Like it's like, well, now we expect a national championship. And I'm like, do you realize where we were between this year and this year?
Hmm.
Like, you idiots. Like, if you fire, who are you going to hire?
Yeah, exactly. Like, who are you gonna hire that's better, and who are you gonna hire that is gonna bring the same consistency? I just think so many people think it's just so easy to be able to get in the NCAA tournament and go to the national title every year. Like, it's not like even like Duke, who's what's is a blue blood. Like, even Duke isn't doing that. Like,
Oh,
even with in the last few years of Coach K, they weren't doing that. Like UNC might be the outlier, just like a handful of years ago. In the last couple of years of Roy Williams' career, like went to the national title game like consecutive years, won one, lost the other, right? Um, yeah, like shit, like our one of our rivals, Purdue, like they've been so good for so long, but then they get in the tournament and they've been losing these double digit seeds, and it's just like, are they going to fire Matt Painter? They
no.
shouldn't. Like, he's been great there. He's all he does is win. He's missed
Oh,
the tournament like 4 times his entire time at Purdue, and he's been there like my entire life. And so, to me, the way I look at it is, I just I want Illinois to always be in the running to make the tournament. And like, I felt like during the gross years and the end of Bruce Weber's tenure, like you were like praying that that was going to
mhm.
happen.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, we're competing for Big Ten titles too.
Yeah.
And we're bringing guys in who are going to the NBA and, or at least playing professionally. And, um, like they just, it's just like a new set of dudes every year that are coming in and, you know, living up to the standard that Brad Underwood has built. And the one year where, outside of those first couple where he was rebuilding the program, the one year where, I guess you can argue that, for more criticism for him was probably last season.
Hmm.
I think that was a lot more of just internal locker room. Like, a lot of those players didn't get along the way that, they should. And, like Brad Underwood gets a lot of criticism because of guys who've transferred, but it's like a lot of, like, almost all those guys who have transferred, except for Brandon Podsminski, have gone on and haven't exactly done better.
And
Adam
transferred
Miller,
again.
yeah, Adam Miller, who for whatever reason, he left and goes to LSU. Unfortunately, tears his ACL, so I feel bad for him there. But comes back, isn't very good his next year, and then he transfers to Arizona State, and they weren't good. They didn't make the tournament. Jaden Epps, Georgetown, terrible this year, right? They'll probably be better next year though. But whatever, either way, not good. Sky Clark has just entered the transfer portal
Yep.
again,
Yep.
right? He's going to leave Louisville, and they've had some other guys who have left too, but like those are the names that everyone talks about, and it's just like, who cares? You're the guys who want to be here are going to be here, and the guys who want to transfer here are going to transfer here. And I'll give Brad credit for just kind of owning the transfer portal, like
Oh, yeah. He
Marcus
exceeded it last
Damas.
year.
Yeah, Marcus Damas, a great transfer this year. Dane Danger's been a great transfer. Obviously, Terrence Shannon's been a great transfer that he's brought in. Not this year, but the year before. Like, he's brought in some guys that have transferred over the years, and he's turned them into really good players. It put them in a system that they can excel in, right? So I'm I'm all aboard the Brad Underwood trade or train for as long as he will let us. I mean,
Well,
I,
because when people transferred, I don't know if you saw it, I did, was
mhm,
they don't like Brad Underwood. The players don't get along with him.
yeah.
They find the photos of him like screaming, and they're like, "Why would you play for?" I remember that last year, the year before,
Oh yeah, the Northwestern game. Yeah.
he was yelling and freaking out, and they were posting like, who would ever want to play for this guy? And I retweeted. I'm like, I would. Like, this is the coach. Like, what are we
Yeah,
talking about?
right.
Oh, these guys just don't understand him and they're going to leave. They leave because of him. Look at all these players that left. And I said, but doesn't it say something that Terrence Shannon Jr. wanted to come back? Coleman Hawkins wanted
Mhm.
to come back.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, and like
Oregon.
even this year, like I think there was some conversation of Dre Gibbs Lawhorn probably trying to transfer after his
Yeah.
1 year.
Yeah.
And I think it's looking more so likely that he's going to stay now based off how the rest of the season has played out. And even Dane Danger, I thought he was someone who could transfer mid-season just because he was getting like 2 minutes a game, and now
Hmm.
he's like out there for at least 10 to 15 minutes a game, and he's become a huge part of how this team is excelling right now.
Right.
Um, you know, like winning cures a lot of stuff, right? No doubt. And we're talking all this right now when Illinois is about to play in the Sweet 16 on Thursday, and they look really good and they're exciting and all these things. They have the best offense in the country according to Ken Palm, all these things. But I'm not saying you can't criticize Brad Underwood for certain things. The one thing I've always said is I feel like his in-game adjustments could use some
Hmm.
work, and perhaps maybe if he could find a way to make changes a little bit quicker, sure. But at the same time, we're winning 20 games every season. We're going to the NCAA tournament. We're battling for the top of the Big Ten every single year. I can have those criticisms, but I can also recognize that, like, man, like Josh Whitman hit a home run on this hire.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's not something that I'm going to take for granted. It's like I just don't. The people who don't like him, I'm just kind of like, do you remember when like
Hmm.
LaRon Black and Kendrick Nunn were getting arrested, and
Yes.
like this team wasn't even close to making the NCAA tournament, lost like so many games that last year of John Gross, and oh my, it was just a mess. And the fact that neither Gross or Bruce Weber could recruit either, like
Mhm.
Io DeSumo from Chicago comes to Illinois. Oh, Terrence Shannon, who you did recruit, he ends up going to Texas Tech, but he's also from Chicago, decides to transfer to Illinois. Like
Mhm.
it, like Justin Harmon from Chicago, like it. Those two guys struggled so much at recruiting in Chicago, and it was so notably talked about so much. So many guys from Chicago that end up like going somewhere else, like Derrick Rose, for example, Jabari Parker, like that didn't like Jabari Parker went to Duke, and Anthony Davis went to Kentucky. Like all these dudes
Who
that
was the
from
guy that went to
Chicago.
Indiana and there was that big thing that happened? What was his name?
Um.
You know what I'm talking about? Like that point guard from Indiana and like from
Was it
Illinois.
Eric Gordon?
Yeah, like that type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I remember the Eric Gordon stuff. Man, I was young for that, but yeah, I do remember
I'm old. I'm old, so I remember all that.
it. But like again, like he's recruiting better than you know any coach that they've had outside of Bill Self, who recruited all those guys from the Final Four team, right? So, um, yeah, it's just I don't understand the Brad Underwood haters, man. Like no coach is perfect, but man, he's built this program back up to like something we can all be proud of and look forward to the future and just expect to, be in the running for Big Ten titles every year and get into the tournament and maybe get hot and do what we're doing this year.
Well, that was the other criticism. He can't get out of the weekend, and then the
Right.
coach should fire him
Right.
because he can't get out of the weekend. And I'm like, I would rather make it and have a chance than
Yeah.
lose 18 games and be like, well, at least we're better than Northwestern's good now, but back then, like I guess we're better than Northwestern. That's about
Yeah.
it. Everybody else is good.
Right. And also, like, I think some of these fans need to realize that, the consistency of that he's doing. Again, more wins than any coach in the Big Ten the last 5 years. And, Jawan Howard won a coach of the year a few years ago, and he just lost his
Oh,
job. Michigan just had their worst season in a very, very long time. Chris Holtman was fired, and,
mhm.
Ohio State, had some good years with him. Like, Mike Woodson took, Indiana had a lot of expectations the year before with Trace Jackson Davis and everyone else that they had there. And they made a decent run, but obviously didn't go as far as they wanted. And then this year, like, they were terrible. I know they had a lot of injuries or whatever, but shit, their number one recruit that they had decommitted. And like there's a lot of issues there. And Indiana still calls himself a blue blood, right?
I
Like
know.
which is laugh out loud funny. But like you look at teams across the Big Ten right now, you look at the teams that, especially that, for me at least, you're just used to them being good. And you're like, wow, Illinois is better than all of them. Purdue is the only one that you can say that Illinois isn't better than in terms of just overall success over a long period of time. Like, Purdue has been very consistently good during the Matt Painter era. They just haven't won a national title. They haven't got to a Final Four, but they've had some deep runs. They've also had some very quick runs like last year too, right? But at the end of the day, if I was a Purdue fan, I just, as hurt as I'd been by, St. Peter's and Fairleigh Dickinson and North Texas, it's like you're still at the top of the Big Ten every year. And the Big Ten is one of the best conferences in college basketball year in and year out. Maybe not so much this year, but like over the course of time, it has been. And I don't know. It's just the way that I look at things. I guess at some certain point, you got to get to a point where you're expecting a Final Four, at least someone in there. I think that's what Purdue fans are expecting this year. Like, it's either Final Four or bust, national championship game or bust for Purdue fans, right? But eventually, I feel like Illinois can get to those types of expectations in time. Like, again, he's been at Illinois for like, what, 7 years, something like that, and
Yeah.
5 of them we've been, one of the best teams in conference. So to me, it's like, there's no, like, why would you want to change something that's not broke,
Well, especially, I told people he now has to figure out how to coach in this new transfer portal era. And that
Mm-hmm.
was only the one criticism last year and the year before was he did a good job of getting guys, building them up as freshmen.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that anymore. And I said last year, I said, I think he's going to figure it out. And he did. He got good guys in the transfer,
Yeah.
already attacking the transfer. He's still recruiting freshmen in the Chicagoland area because he's like, you're going to come to Illinois. I think this year proved that like he's going to make those adjustments and how the recruiting works. And
Mm-hmm.
uh I mean, it's shown this year. So I'm like, where's the criticism now? Like,
Yeah.
that's why I'm funny on Twitter. Like, people will post that stuff like, wait a minute, didn't you just want him fired like a year ago? Now like, oh, they won
Yeah.
a Big Ten title. Now he's good all of a sudden. Like,
Right.
you weren't
Yeah.
saying this under John Gross. Like, we were just hoping to be in the top, be like number 5 in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Now we're expecting top 3. That's what we're expecting now.
Yeah.
Sometimes the expectation comes with idiots and that say, well, if we don't get there or if this doesn't happen,
Right.
but like,
Yeah. It's we're living through a really special time for Illinois basketball, no doubt. Like, it's, to me, for someone who for most of my life they haven't really been a good program. Like, I became a fan the year they went to the Final Four in 04, 05 when I was like 13, 14 years old.
right.
And then, they had a couple of tournament runs after that, right? The rest of D Brown and James Augustine's careers. And, the Brandon Paul, Myers Leonard, DJ Richardson era was fun. They had a couple good teams, they had some cool upset wins, but those teams were never considered like, like elite teams that were going to, lead you to, even close to a Final Four, let alone a second weekend in the tournament, right?
Right.
And then there's just that really bad stretch in John Gross's era. And then, obviously, even the first 2 years of Underwood when people were calling for him to be fired then, admittedly, when he first got hired, I didn't know what to think. I just kind of was like, all right, well, it's got to be better than John Gross. Like, we got to
Yeah.
let this play out. They got to rebuild the program, all these things. And I just remember when Ayo Dosunmu came to Illinois and like the hype that came behind him and just watching him play that first year, despite how bad the team was, I felt like, okay, well, this kid looks like that's someone that if he sticks around and really perfects his game year in and year out, if you put some guys around him, you could you could have a good team, and like that's what he did. Watching him and Trent Frazier and Demonte Williams, and eventually Kofi Coburn, and some of the other guys that came through the program during that era of Illinois basketball a few years ago. Like it was fun, even though
Mhm.
like we were heartbroken by the Loyola loss. Like it was just fun to be able to be excited to turn on an Illinois game, a couple of times a week in the
Right.
winter during this like terrible like weather that we get here in Illinois, right?
Yeah.
Like, um, and now they, again, last year, not great in terms of just, I don't know, the team wasn't even fun to watch. When they lost to Arkansas, I was just glad the season was over, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
right? But they've the way he turned things around this year with a team that, admittedly, from me coming into the season, I didn't have high expectations. It was more of like, okay, Brad, like got more transfers in here. Like you did this last year too. Are you
Mhm.
putting the right? Are you going to put the right the right transfers around each other? And I questioned Coleman Hawkins. I questioned if Terrence Shannon was you know better than last season or not. And
Right.
they showed it. They've showed it all year that they got better this past offseason and going into this year, right? And
Right.
I think a large part of it is the fact that Brad also put the right guys around him. Like Marcus Damask has just been like the perfect complement with Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins. And Quincy Guerrier, as inconsistent as he is, like when he shows the value that he has, it's almost like Illinois and is in it's hard to beat them whenever he's hitting those threes or whatever,
Mhm.
right? And Dane Dange's the X factor, and you're seeing Lou Goody hit a couple threes in this tournament so far, and like they have a lot of depth. They can go deep off the bench, and a lot of those guys would be starters on other teams probably. And yeah, I just give them all the credit for putting this team together. And so like there's definitely more confidence for me for sure. Like I already had confidence that we're at least going to be, a competitive team every year that's going to be competing for Big Ten titles. But I mean, now I feel even more confident about, where this program could be headed over the next 5 years.
Well, and they're
So
having fun when he had the squirt gun at the end of the game, like that he comes running in, and
yeah.
then all the hate from the Purdue thing. Like, look at the difference between winners and all that stuff. I was so mad this morning when I saw that. I was like, you've got to be shitting me.
Honestly, it gave me so many Cardinal vibes, like Cardinal fan
Yeah.
vibes.
Yes.
It's something a Cardinals fan would do to be like, oh, this team is having fun. You can't have fun in this tournament. It's all business. Like
Yeah.
what? And honestly, it's just like some of the most unneeded like discourse on social media that I've ever seen. And it's like, okay, why are Purdue fans continuing to talk about Illinois fans and just Illinois in general? We're not even in the same part of the bracket as you guys. Like, why are you talking about us? Like, are you've beat us twice. Like I've given you my respect. Why are you still talking about us, man?
Yeah.
Like what is this?